blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. So amid the conflict, whether great or small, do not be discouraged, God is over all. Count your many blessings, angels will attend. Help and comfort give you to your journey's end. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done.
Blue skies and rainbows and sunbeams from heaven are what I can see. When my Lord is living in me, I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart. Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus, for it is the power that saves us today. I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart. Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part.
Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Thou art the potter, I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will. While I am waiting, yielded and still. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being absolute sway. Fill with thy Spirit till all shall see Christ only, always living in me.
If the skies above you are gray, you are feeling so blue. If your cares and burdens seem great all the whole day through, there's a silver lining that shines in the heavenly land. Look by faith and see it, my friend. Trust in his promises, friend. Sing and
be happy,
be happy, press on to the goal. Trust in him
who leadeth
who leads you, he will keep your soul. Let all be faithful, look to him and pray. Lift your voice and praise him in song. Sing and be happy today. Lift your voice and praise him in song. Sing and be happy today.
that. Well, there's that. Good. We've got the lights. We've got the microphone. Now if we just have the screen. That might be a good thing. There we go. Now we're working on that. Well, good morning. We'll start with, let's start with just a quick prayer as soon as my wife sits down. No. All right, let's pray. God, we thank you for today and thank you for the wonderful weather that we've had. God, it's cold today, but it's warm in here. And we thank you for the joy that we can have coming together as a family and spending time in your word. God, we thank you for everything that you do for us, and we ask that you please bless this time as we look through your word. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So let's start with last week. Does anybody remember what we're talking about? Apologetics. Great. Now, what is apologetics? Okay, a defending of your faith. Very good. And what is our theme verse? Why do we think apologetics is a good thing? 1 Peter 3:15. That is correct. So 1 Peter 3:15. Just remember that in the back of your head. Now, here we go today. This big topic of does God exist? Specifically, we're going to look at two areas for support in this question of does God exist? Specifically, design and creation. We're going to look at those. So, thinking about this is one of those easy questions. Why do you believe in God? Right? That's an easy question. When you look at it in terms of having to defend your answer is when it gets complicated. And I hope that the collective group of we right now have gone beyond the point of answering, why do you believe in God? Well, because it's what my parents taught me. Right? It's got to be something deeper than just that surface level, I do it because someone else. Now, that's a great reason, don't get me wrong, and that's why we take our kids to church and things like that. But it can't be the only reason. So when we're looking at this, why do you believe in God? Today's topic, we're going to be making a reasoned case. Again, apologetics is all about reasoning and knowledge. And we're going to be making a reasoned case for God's existence. Again, looking at specifically design and creation. And here's the guiding question. If the universe cannot create itself, we're going to talk more about that in a second. If the universe cannot create itself and human life is filled with meaning and design, we're going to look into that one too, what is the most reasonable explanation? Y'all ever heard of Occam's razor? Does anyone know what that is? What is Occam's razor?
Most logical explanation is probably the answer.
The simplest. Right? Now, logical comes into that, but the simplest answer. So, all things being equal, it's a problem-solving technique that if I'm looking at all of these possible answers, usually the simplest one is going to be the answer. And let's not overcomplicate things. So keep that in the back of your mind, too, today. I've got a quote from C.S. Lewis. I really like C.S. Lewis, in case you haven't picked up on that yet. So here's a quote from C.S. Lewis. Humans recognize beauty, morality, awe, and purpose, all signals pointing beyond nature. We'll dig into that in a minute. The Bible claims that God created us. Okay, I think we can all agree on that, and that's going to be the purpose of the next slide. But here's the thing. Science provides an extraordinary amount of support for that statement. And that's what is going to be a big focus on today's topic. And hopefully I don't end up going over, because I've got a lot of information on this, because I kind of got excited when I was creating this. because there is a lot of really compelling information. But let's start with the Bible. Genesis 1:1. You don't even have to look at it. What does Genesis 1:1 say? In the beginning, God did what? Created. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We're going to dig into that in a minute. But just for right now, realize God is an eternal, uncaused creator. He exists outside of this universe, and we're going to dig into that, like I said, in a minute. I should probably stop saying we're going to get into that in a minute and probably just get into that. But we'll wait for a minute. That's another way of saying that, roundabout. All right, Psalm 19:1 and 4. This one, I remember this one. My sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Goff, we had, was that my first year? I think that was my first year at SES, at Southwest Christian. And this verse, I still remember it because this was our memory verse. This whole chapter was our memory verse for like a few weeks or a semester or something. I don't remember how long, but I remember every day having to come in and say these passages over and over again. So shout out to Miss Goff. I still remember you. Psalm 19:1 and 4. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the end of the world. Did you hear that again? The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Even though we can't hear them, right? They're not using actual words. They are communicating that God is behind creation. The natural world, everything around us, actively communicates the reality of God. How about Romans 1:20? For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. God's invisible attributes, again, clearly seen in nature, in God's creation. Creation reveals God's power and his divine nature so clearly that we are without excuse. That's a tough pill to swallow sometime, right? When we get those terms that don't leave any ambiguity, right? Because we think, no, I'm not going to get off topic, but just think of that for what it is. That God's nature is so incredible, and his essence is revealed in it so clearly that mankind is without excuse. The Bible, in all of these and throughout the whole Bible, is affirming that creation points directly to a creator. If we want to take that back one step, we can say that Scripture teaches us a general revelation, right? That people can know God exists from the world. Just looking at the world itself, people can know that there is a God. The Bible doesn't ask for blind trust. We talked about this last week in Hebrews 11:1. It's not asking for blind trust. It is repeatedly pointing to an observable creation, observable evidence. Now, here's where we get some fun words. The teleological argument. Has anyone ever heard of that word? Teleological. It's another Greek one. Telos meaning purpose, I believe. No Greek scholars in the audience? Okay, good. Yeah, it means purpose. So, teleological argument. That is a big word that just means that design implies a designer. Great. I don't know why we have to have a huge word that just means that. That's kind of one of those obvious things. If you've got a design, you've got a designer. Okay. So if we look back, way back, let's go to, now I can't remember, maybe 400 BC. Is that when Socrates was alive? Socrates, Plato, or Aristotle? Does anyone know these? I should probably fact check myself and not just rely on my memory. I think that's right. Around 400 BC, these three guys, Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato, pretty big philosophical type people, and gave some pretty good arguments. They wrestled with this. And that's where this teleological argument can find its roots. They contemplated the idea of, well, we've got all this stuff around us, who made it? And they started to present arguments. Well, that kind of took hold and built over the years, and we get up to about the 1200s in the Middle Ages, where we get St. Thomas Aquinas. You may have heard of his name too. He wrote a missive that was the 5 ways to demonstrate that God is real, to demonstrate God's existence. And one of those 5 ways is what we're going to be talking about today. Then we move further on, and this is one that you've probably heard of. William Paley, maybe you don't remember his name, but the watchmaker analogy. Have y'all heard that? That you're walking along in the woods, and you look down, and you find a watch, perfectly working, all the numbers on the clock face, and it's ticking along, and you think to yourself, wow, that's incredible that, nature made this perfectly functioning piece of machinery that works, and you can pick it up. If you haven't heard that, there you go. If you want to take it maybe into today's time, think about you're walking along and you find an iPhone that's just sitting on the ground, maybe covered with some leaves and stuff, and you kind of kick at it, see what it is. You move the leaves over, you pick it up, and you can it turns on, and you can touch it and interact with it, and it has applications on there, different things that you can do, different functionality. You can actually reach out and communicate to other people. You can send messages. You can link up with other devices. It's just this incredible piece of work. And you think, wow, look what millions of years of wind, heat, and erosion have caused this perfect thing to work, and it works perfectly assembled. It works so well and flawlessly. Does that seem ludicrous? I don't know if I could think of a better word, but that's the argument. That's the argument that's being made for things like evolution. That this, I don't want to point at myself, but humanity, human beings, that it was all just a big accident. That all of this just happened to come together so perfectly that we exist. And if you take a step back and you realize, how could an iPhone be made naturally by accident? No one in their right mind would come to that conclusion. And yet that's the conclusion that a lot of people are coming to with us. Now, whenever we find, or wherever we find, complexity, purpose, and information. Those are the big 3 things that I'll be driving home today. Complexity, purpose, and information. We infer an intelligent design and not just chance. Okay? Now, I would encourage you to take notes. I could have gone a few different ways with this class, right? This whole idea of does God exist? There were a few different, really 2 different routes that I could have gone. One was, let's look at some of the objections that a lot of people present, where does God exist, and here are arguments against that, and we could have counteracted those. I chose the other way. This way is let me present some facts, and let me give you the information that is compelling to me. And I'll let you determine, what that means. I am going to step back, and I am going to say, here is the stuff, you do with it what you will. But this is the stuff that is really, is just really overwhelmingly in favor of God. That's how I interpret it. So I really do. I encourage you to take notes because there's a lot of facts that I'm going to give you. Maybe you want to look at this afterwards too. And if anybody ever wants my notes, please, I've already got one, I do. I don't know, maybe I'll put this on the website, my guide lesson that I'm using. That might be helpful. I bet we can do that. So let's go into this. All right, so we'll start with the human body. Human body is very complicated, and we take a lot of it for granted. Let's look at the eye. There is a lot going on in just these two little round balls that are my eye. You've got things like, just to mention a few of them, the cornea, the lens, the iris, the pupil, the retina, the optic nerve, right? That is, all of those things are for the purpose of what? What does your eye do for you? Yeah, sight. It helps you see. Okay. So we've got, in terms of evolution, we would say that all of these things developed so that we might be able to realize our world. Okay? Look at this. The retina alone has about 130 million photoreceptors. Okay? 130 million. It's got dozens of very specialized cells that are arranged in a very precise layered network. The lens, composed of thousands of highly ordered fiber cells. Together, everything together, the eye contains millions of precisely arranged biological components. We'll dig into this. Think about what your eye does, though, for a second. Let's take a step back. Those were a lot of numbers, right? 130 million, we've got thousands, we've got millions of all these different things that are all cooperating in order just to catch light. And that's essentially what your eye does. It catches the light. Your eye, it performs an enormous amount of computation. Okay, I've got a computer background, so sorry if I get a little nerdy in some of these, but this is crazy. About 10 billion operations every second is what your eye is doing. Think about this. And that's all before it gets to your brain. So this is just your eye, what your eye is doing. Edge detection. I can see that there's an edge right here. Okay, I am realizing that even before it gets to my brain. Motion detection. Contrast enhancement, noise filtering. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but when you walk, have y'all ever tried to like balance a book on your head and walk? If you haven't, it's kind of an interesting thing. But most people don't walk perfectly smooth, right? Most people bounce a little bit when you walk. Does that bother you when you see it? No, because you're filtering that stuff out. It's really cool. Optic nerve. Let's go. So now we've got the sight stuff, and now it's going back in your brain. The optic nerve contains about 1 million retinal ganglion cell axons. All that means is there is a whole lot of bandwidth. Okay, bandwidth is the amount of information that you can send from one thing to another. You have got a crazy amount of bandwidth that can go from your eyeball to your brain. System is perfectly integrated. Now, if you take out any layer of those, any layer from the eyeball, the whole thing falls apart. It doesn't work. What's weird about this is if you think about evolution, when you think about evolution, right, the main thing from evolution is that things are developed to serve a purpose, right? Fish develop gills so they can live underwater, okay? If we're looking at an eyeball and the things associated with that, How did all of those things evolve? Like I said, each one of those, if they are taken out, any part of that eye, if they are taken out, the whole thing falls apart. You have no sight. So if you were going to create, think of a staircase. Let's do it this way. Think of a staircase. I've got to build this one to get to the next step, to get to the next step, to get to the next step. If all of those things were to get to eyesight, how did evolution, if it's starting down here, get to up here without foresight? If I'm developing evolution, if it develops this for a purpose, how did it know where it was going? If you have a design, you have a designer. You tracking? Okay. Let's go to this one. Y'all know what that is. What is that? Well, it says on the title, right? So, tried to trick you. Okay. So DNA. DNA is incredible. DNA is maybe the most powerful evidence for a mind, a creator behind life. DNA is like the instruction manual. If y'all haven't taken biology in a while, okay, DNA, let me give you a little quick refresher. DNA is like the instruction manual for life. It tells your body how to grow, how to function, how to look. Every living thing from tiny bacteria to humans, okay? Every living thing has DNA in it. It's what makes you, you, okay? It gives you your uniqueness. DNA, here's the thing, it isn't just chemistry. It is a huge source of symbolic information, okay? And I'll tell you that in a second. I'll kind of explain that further. It's a recipe book, okay? It's got 4 ingredients in it, the A, T, C, and G. And those 4 little ingredients, those 4 little letters, combine in 3 billion different ways. Well, actually, they combine in 3 billion ways, and that's what we get for our human DNA. It sounds like, and again, this is my nerdiness, to me this sounds like computer code, okay? We've got an alphabet that we use, we've got a syntax that we follow, we've got encoding that makes other stuff happen, we've got error correction, we've got information compression, and we have full redundancy. Now, I said this sounds like a computer code, and guess what computer code is made from, right? A programmer. We're going to get to that too. Remember what DNA does. DNA provides our inheritance, right? I get half of my DNA from my mom and half from my dad, and that's what makes me. That's why I might have my dad's eyes and my mom's smile, let's say. It gives me uniqueness, though. Except for identical twins, there are no 2 people with the same DNA. It also gives me the blueprint for life. It doesn't just decide what I look like, but it controls how my body works, like digesting food or fighting illnesses and all that stuff. Now here's the thing, science cannot explain, does not know, at least yet, okay, does not know how DNA came about in terms of evolution. How we got from an atom to a molecule to DNA. In terms of evolution, there is no explanation. None at all. It does not exist. Even origin of life researchers, people that research that, admit that the emergence of DNA, it's an unsolved problem. It's one of those, we have no idea type things. Again, I'm going to hammer this home. All known sources of information, if you think about where do you get information from? Maybe you get it from a book. Well, where does a book come from? An author, okay? Software, we talked about that. Where does software come from? Programmers. How about music? Where does music come from? Composers. How about blueprints? We get those from architects and engineers. All of these things that convey information or communicate something come from someone. There was a guy named Werner Gitt. He's an information scientist. He says the DNA molecule is the most efficient information storage system in the universe. Here's some more amazing facts, and I'll show you this on the next slide too. DNA is extremely stable. Y'all remember the book, or I guess the movie, Jurassic Park? The book's better, by the way. Although the movie was really good. Jurassic Park, what was the premise of Jurassic Park? Right, that they found these mosquitoes in tree sap, and they were going to extract the DNA from dinosaurs that the mosquitoes had bitten, and they were going to recreate the dinosaurs, right? Great science fiction stuff. But, we say science fiction, that kind of stuff, we can actually do a little bit of that. We can see DNA from creatures that were alive very, very long ago. Things like woolly mammoths, we can still see those. DNA stores information in densities far higher than any silicon chips, any PC components that we can make right now. Okay, are you ready to be blown away? Are you ready? Okay. Check out these facts. So 1 gram of DNA. Now, a gram isn't very much. If you think about an M&M, just a single M&M, right? That is roughly, it's a little bit less, but roughly the weight of that's about a gram. Okay, 1 gram of DNA can hold up to 215 petabytes of data. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with computers, so I'll go with you. Computers store data in bits, which is a 1 or a 0. When we get 8 of those 1s and 0s, we get a byte. If we multiply that by 1,000, we get a kilobyte. If we multiply that by 1,000, we get a megabyte. If we multiply that by 1,000, we get a gigabyte. Very good. If we multiply that by 1,000, terabyte. Good job. And if we multiply that by 1,000, then we get a petabyte. Okay, so this is an immense amount of information. 215 petabytes in 1 gram. Before you look at that, you probably already have, but before you look at that, you know on like Netflix, y'all do Netflix? Okay, or Amazon Prime or whatever streaming service you do, you ever get overloaded? Or you remember when cable first came out? How about that? When you went from like having 2 or 3 stations on TV to all of a sudden having 100 in cable. But if you look at streaming services now, it's just this crazy amount of videos and stuff you can watch. You can, in your whole lifetime, you can never watch everything that's on there. But think about this. So 1 petabyte, that's what we're thinking about, 215 petabytes, this 1 gram of DNA can store 43 to 53 million movies in HD, which is enough to store every movie ever made in history. Are you hearing me on that? Every movie ever made in history. Tens of thousands of times over. In 1 gram of DNA. How about music? 43 to 70 billion MP3 songs. MP3 is the format that music is stored in. So digital songs. That's more songs that have ever been recorded by humanity. The entire Library of Congress. Has anyone ever been there? No, my parents have. It's a pretty cool place. If you took all of the entirety of the Library of Congress and digitized that, it's about 40 million books, about 20 terabytes worth of data. 1 gram of DNA, you could store that 11,000 times, the entirety of the Library of Congress. Your body has 160 times that amount. Just you. If you take everything on the internet, everything, I don't know if you would want to, but everything that is on the internet, which is just an absurd amount of data, you could take that and store it over 160 times over. That's what makes you you. It's crazy, right? How about this one? If I haven't blown your mind yet, well, let's talk about the mind. Now this one, I'm not going to blow you away with facts, but I am going to talk to you about some things. Let's see if we can convince you here. I think we can all agree animals show some intelligence, right? Like I call my dog Samson, and Samson looks at me and he comes running over to me, right? There's some intelligence there. He can recognize and he can do simple commands like sit or like eat everything in the house, right? Yeah, that's my dog. Amy says I need to bring a picture of my dog, need to work him into here somehow. So we'll do that. But human cognition, okay? Animals can be intelligent, but human cognition is on a different level altogether. It's not just, a step above. We're talking about not even comparable here. Humans alone possess rationality. Okay? If we think of terms like logic and mathematics, rationality, I can reason abstractly. I can reason symbolically. I can reason recursively. I can derive universal principles. Things like geometry. I can understand geometry. I can understand calculus. I can understand logic and fallacies and things along those lines. That's not necessary for survival. Mathematics. This is an interesting one. Mathematics describes the fundamental structure of the universe. And if I was evolved only for survival, or maybe a better way of putting it, biological fitness, that might be a more PC way of saying that, it doesn't make sense. Why would I have evolved these things? Do you like geometry? Did anyone remember, look back fondly and Algebra 2, that was so much fun? I'll tell you, Calculus 2, I hated that class in college, but I had to take it. E equals mc squared, right? This great thing that was back in 1917 that Einstein revealed to us. Is that necessary for survival? Kids always complain, Mom, I don't need to do this. It's not going to be important anymore. I don't need to know the Pythagorean theorem, right? When am I ever going to use that in life? Well, you got a point. Once you get past that, it's not really necessary. Now, that's rationality. Morality and conscience. Humans make judgments about right and wrong that are beyond self-interest. Again, if I am evolved just for my survival and maybe for procreation, these things, I don't care about morality. I admire things like self-sacrifice, like justice, compassion, traits that don't align with, again, strict survival. My moral reasoning is guided by principles and standards rather than just relying on instinct. How about self-awareness? I can say things like, I know that I know, or I think, therefore I am. I can contemplate the thoughts that I have introspectively. I contemplate things like meaning, things like purpose, things like the future, things like death, things like what happens after death. Again, survival, not necessary for those things. Appreciation of beauty, of music, of art. I create symphonies. We went to a choir concert last night. That was wonderful. I can create books. I can write literature. I can make abstract art or architecture. And I can appreciate that aesthetic. I can appreciate that. Although modern art I don't really appreciate. But I can see people that do. How about language? Language is infinite. Human language, infinitely generative. I can create and understand sentences never spoken before. There's no animal communication system that has recursion, syntax, metaphor, or symbolic abstraction. these things aren't pointing just to intelligence, but to mind-like capacities that far exceed just the biological need for survival. Think about survival. What do I need for survival? I was going to ask if y'all have ever played Minecraft, but that's kind of a silly question. You all ever heard of Minecraft? It's a video game. Shelter is something you need, right? Food is something you need. If we were in education, we would talk about, was it Maslow? Yeah, we would talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But let's boil it down. You need food, you need shelter, you need to avoid danger, okay? Those are the types of things. And then we could add things like reproduce, okay, if we're going to go like full spectrum. But think about all those things I just listed that are beyond the scope of strictly survival. Things like philosophy, things like religion, things like ethics, art, music, literature, science, mathematics, long-term planning. These things are just so far beyond what strictly survival says. Here's some people. Here's some quotes from some people. Scientists and philosophers note the excess of human minds. Steven Pinker calls music auditory cheesecake. Isn't that kind of a fun one? Auditory cheesecake, because it's pleasurable but inexplicable under strict adaptation. Thomas Nagel argues consciousness and reason are too easily reducible to physical evolution. Roger Penrose maintains that mathematical insight cannot be explained by computational biology alone. Mark Hauser and Johnathan Haidt show that humans apply moral reasoning beyond utilitarian belief. So, human mental capacity or mental life, whatever you want to call it, it seems to way overshoot what strictly survival would say. Let's go on, because this one's interesting. The fine-tuning of the universe. Not just fine-tuning, but fine-tuning to specifically make our universe human-friendly, okay? Are you ready for these? The fundamental constants of nature are astonishingly, and you could even, absurdly, you can put that word in there, absurdly precise. You change them just a little bit, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. You change them just a little bit, and our universe doesn't just it's not just a little bit weird, it becomes impossible. Gravitational constant, right? Y'all know what gravity is. I'd pick something up and I drop it, and I'm not going to drop that because that would be bad. But you drop something, it goes down towards the center of the earth, okay? We know what gravity is. So the strength of gravity for the universe, if altered by 1 part in, I don't know if you can see that, 10 to the 60. Do y'all remember scientific notation from way back in school? What does that 10 to the 60 represent? 10 followed by how many zeros? 60. Okay, good. That's a big number. Okay, that's a big number. 1 part in 1060. If we change gravity, I'm going to have to rush to get through these because I want to. If we change gravity by just that 1 part, by one number in 1060, then the stars will not produce the heavy elements required for life. Planets, the things we live on, couldn't form. To put that in perspective, 1 part in 1060 is like taking the entire mass of the galaxy, everything that's in the galaxy, okay, the weight of all of that stuff that's in the galaxy, and adding 1 grain of sand. Are you catching the precision here? 1 grain of sand versus the whole mass of our galaxy. Again, if it were slightly stronger, we would collapse into black holes. If it were weaker, it would never clump and everything would just be spread out. Cosmological constant. This one's a weird one. Cosmological constant is an energy that acts as a repulsive force against gravity. Okay? If we changed by 1 part, not in 10 to the 60, but 10 to the 120. Okay, we're getting like absurdly astonishing numbers here. Universe would collapse or explode instantly. It's fine-tuned to a precision beyond comprehension. Listen to this. If you were setting up a target, okay, think of it this way. If you're setting up a target, do y'all know what a light year is? The amount of distance that light would travel in 1 year. Okay, light is really fast, 186,000 miles per second it can travel. Okay, if we set up a target that was trillions of light years away, trillions of light years away, so we're talking about a huge distance, you would be shooting at a target that was smaller than a proton, a part that is in the nucleus of an atom. Yeah, you'd have to hit that. That's how much we're talking about this. Strong nuclear force. Let's keep going. The strong nuclear force is what holds those protons together in a nucleus. Okay? If we change that, if it were slightly weaker, protons wouldn't bind, meaning no molecules, meaning hydrogen, which is the first one on your periodic table of elements, because it's only got 1 proton, nothing beyond hydrogen would form. If it was slightly stronger, everything would fuse. Strong force sits on a razor's edge that makes complex chemistry possible, makes life possible. There's a physicist, Fred Hoyle, you may have heard of him. He is an atheist, by the way. He's quoted as, "A super intellect has monkeyed with physics." Okay, an atheist is saying this. Okay, Paul Davies, who is also a physicist, says the universe looks suspiciously like a fix, and there's no reason for the universe to exist in a form suitable for life. The laws of physics seem to be structured with extraordinary ingenuity. How about Sir Isaac Newton? Probably heard of him. This most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. For the sake of time, I'm going to move on. How about the Big Bang? The universe had a beginning. The Bible agrees with this, right? In the beginning, God created. That's a very set, finite period of time. The universe is not eternal. If we want to look at this from an outside perspective, law of cause and effect. I take this and I set it down. I cause that to happen. I can push it. Things like that. Scientists search for cause because the world operates by this thing, causal order. I cause and then there's an effect. If the universe began to exist, then something or someone must have caused it. Beginning without a cause violates this most basic principle of rational inquiry. Necessary first cause needs to be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, and intentional. Space began at the Big Bang. Time began with the universe. Matter came into existence at the beginning of the universe.
Hey, John, that's a question.
Yes.
I know you're short on time, if you're not time for the ones in this slide. You've given a lot of great information. Last week, you talked about giving an elevator speech. Since you studied this so well, people that I interact with, I may have 30 seconds to talk them out. I would be curious, what would be your elevator speech with everything you've been given today? Do you pick 1 or 2 things, or how would you do that?
For me, so the question is the elevator pitch, right? And I told you, if you've only got a short amount of time with someone, what's your big thing? And I think it's going to depend on which one resonated with you, which one of these things. For me, DNA is incredible. The fine-tuning of the universe is also just, it is so far beyond happenstance that there has to be something that compelled these things into existence in the order in which they came. So I would say pick one of these out that really just makes you go, wow, and stick to that one.
I like that, thanks.
Yes. Now, I was going to go into, I know we're short on time, I did have some common objections, and like I said, I wanted to kind of weigh this more towards providing you with information rather than just saying, well, if this situation comes up, here's what you can say, although I do have those. So for the sake of just getting it out, if you wanted to go home and watch it on YouTube, I'll keep clicking through these so you can see them and you can pause them there. But there are just a few objections, things like science disproves God, design is just an illusion, who created God, and the universe created itself. I like this quote from C.S. Lewis. If human thoughts are the result of blind, mindless chemical reactions, then why should we trust them? That kind of idea against naturalism, right? Naturalism says that the universe created itself and we should just believe in that. Well, if we all just came here by accident, then why can I trust my own thoughts, is what he's saying. So, let's go to the last thing, and then I'll leave you here. Creation points to God, okay? It helps us build confidence. And we can see in verses, again, like Revelation 4:11, the throne room in heaven, them praising God. So for next week, I'd like you to read, For next week, I'd like you to read Acts 17. This is Paul defending Christianity and defending God. It's kind of going to set a stage for us. So next week, we'll be talking about the reliability of the Bible. And again, if you want these things, my notes, then come see me afterwards. I'll try to get them on the website as well. All right, thank you for your time.